Thank you, and good to be here. And so I'd like to make this as interactive as you'd like, so if you got a question during this, I have exactly 4 content slides and 1 intro slide, so it should be short. No builds, I hate builds, so let me know if you got a question and we'll just interrupt and address that. So I love them when they're interactive like this. So, why am I here? This journey actually started as about 13 years ago, almost 2 weeks short of 13 years ago, this journey started. And it was all about creating a reformation around the teacher, a renaissance in the classroom, full laptop, one-to-one computing, full digital curriculum to crush the digital divide. And that was the one-to-one strategy that we designed and developed at Apple in those days. And we went out, we worked with different states and different counties and different districts around the US for those subsequent years and tried to drive those out. The mission, there was a mission to do that, which I'll get to in a couple of slides, and we'll talk about it a little more, but it's really to tell the administrators, tell teachers, tell building level folks what worked and what didn't. By teacher, by child, by content, by day. That was the mission. And you couldn't accomplish that mission unless every child had a device in their hand that you could track stuff on, and you couldn't do it unless you had digital content, right? So we had some success there. The other thing we could never prove, and we worked very hard at this for several years, is the one-to-one initiative never equated to student achievement results. And I was just on a panel at the Education World Forum last January with the fellows that did the Uruguay one-to-one with every child in Uruguay, the Portuguese one in Portugal, and the Nigerian one, and they all agreed. I was with Governor Branstad back in December, and he's back with his 5th term in Iowa, and he worked with us in the Apple days when he was in between terms, and I asked the governor, same thing. Governor, do you still believe the way you did 10 years ago that no student achievement gains are achieved when you do one-to-ones? And I was done quite a few one-to-ones. And he looked at me and he said, yes, I do. And then we had a discussion about what really does move that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But as you go on this journey of education, you have the far left, which is the sage on the stage, front of class kind of notion, and you move up that as you progress down your modalities and through your pedagogies, okay? And by the way, I'm not an educator, I'm just a tech guy. And so what I try to do when I work on education is try to do some of the dot linkage and see what kind of technology concepts we can help education with that come out of different other verticals, right? So the middle level is the knowledge sharing, and what we need to drive for, as you know, is this knowledge community notion. There's 4 precepts that's kind of a religious conversation. And you may have your favorite, you may have your favorite several, you may have all of them as your favorite. And these are the different modalities, okay? And so when we did the one-to-ones, and 32 laptops, iBooks, showed up in that teacher's classroom on Monday morning, that was an interesting moment, okay? And the teachers are having to turn away from, at the time, the dry erase boards to face the class. And in my mind, sort of lost their anvil to hammer and focus class attention on. They still had their hammer, okay, that they could go out and talk to each child about, okay, when they were on their laptops. And who has been to, when Disney down in Orlando had Nemo's submarine ride? Raise your hands, okay? My favorite ride, I hate him for getting rid of it, okay? But the kids filed down and they all sat at their own little porthole. The captain was up narrating the voyage to all of you, and the submarine went on its little voyage. Captain narrating, child seeing everything through their own porthole. To me, that was like the laptops, okay? Kind of a central journey, but the different view of it, all right? Kind of on command and control from the teachers. The whiteboard comes along and puts the anvil back in the teacher's classroom. Because what child with a $1,000 iBook and the internet at their fingertips wants to look at a chalkboard or a dry erase board? And I'm talking 10 years ago. No one, okay? You put a computer board in the class, you now raise the front of the class technology level to be on par with the technology level at the back of the class where the kids are. The next stage is to weave them together as a fabric, okay? Promethean has about 5.6 million handhelds out today, one-to-ones, and has about 1.1 million whiteboards. And for a decade, we've been moving questions and answers around the questions in that fabric, okay? And for the last decade, the one-to-ones had kind of stalled out until Steve and Apple came up with the tablets, the iPads, okay? And have now made iPad projects ubiquitous. In any other name, a wolf in sheep's clothing for a one-to-one. Amen. Great. We love it. Because that's one of the fundamental precepts to be able to tell what works and what doesn't. Every child's got to have a device, whether it's BYOD, whether it's whatever, okay? But what's going to be essential is weaving those disparate technologies and that disparate fabric together in an open format. Doesn't matter whether you have a Google tablet, doesn't matter whether you have an iPad, iOS, Windows, we don't care, okay? We shouldn't care. Doesn't matter whether you have a Promethean interactive whiteboard, a Polyvision, we don't care. It can be anybody's, right? The important thing is to support all four of those modalities in a fabric in the classroom that is really designed for the teacher persona. And when you build good software, and most of my career has been in software, hardware, and combined, okay? When you do good software, you have to decide what your personas are. A building level persona, teacher level persona, the child's persona, those are all different personas, okay? So what has to happen here is we have to make this extremely attractive for the teacher persona, all right, that makes their day easier, okay? My prior company was a special ed software company, and we moved from special ed IEP software into the RTI arena and any programmatic approach to any 504 LEP, any of those types of programs, all right? And we did that by taking the manual away from the teacher. And so when if you're in, who rolled out RTI anywhere? Not many, okay. So an RTI teacher got a manual of how to do the new RTI process, and they got to figure out how to do that extra work during their calm and quiet and collected week, okay? Okay? And by the way, teachers are saints and should be canonized for the work they do, all right? They're underpaid and they're overworked. And so they get another manual, boom, and it's like, great. We would go in and say, we make the manual go away. They're like, yay, I'll talk to you, okay? So that was that fundamental. So this is what we're trying to do again. We're trying to hit this little magic spot where they really go, yes, I want to do this. And I was at dinner with Steve Jobs one time, and he asked me, he goes, Jim, what's the most powerful word in English language? And I said, I don't know. He goes, free. And so we laughed, and I said, so what's the second most powerful word? Back to him. He goes, freedom. So this software for the teacher is going to be free, okay? All you have to do is register in our community, and we're not even sure we're going to make that a requirement, okay? It's just a download. And what that software will do, that software will help to plan, prepare, deliver, assess, and analyze moment to moment for the teacher. And will supply tactical data to the teacher live and on demand, moment to moment, day to day. This goes into lab the end of next month, okay? And we'll launch it probably about 90 days after that. Basically, this is kind of the structure I'm talking about doing, a simple one, okay? And so if any of you, we have about 2.5 million users around the world of our Inspire software today, which is what we use for authoring, presenting, and assessing, okay? And so those users, that functionality will be replicated to some level in that baseline offering. We will charge a support model for this, much like an open source company like a Red Hat or JBoss. So the district that wants to standardize on these, the building that wants to standardize on these can get support for the whole building and the whole district kind of on a global scale. And then for the knowledge that we deliver to the building and the above building level, we're going to have a revenue model around that. So if the administrators and the principals want to know what works and what doesn't, we're going to ask for fees for that, okay? But not for the teacher. This slide I had, so with these 86 ministers that we presented to with the Portuguese and Uruguayan and Nigerian team, I had one chart, so I was immediately popular. This was the only chart I showed, a different version of this. So, and I emceed the panel, and that's the only chart I showed. And so, if one-to-ones don't improve student achievement, what does? And I told them I'd get off the square, so. What does? Again, I'm not an educator, but our education strategists have showed me lists of interventions, okay? Number 2 on that intervention list is feedback. I want feedback from you right now. Are you interested in what I'm saying? Are you not interested? Are you buying some of this stuff? You think I'm full of you know what? Okay? Feedback. What's number one? Motivation. Guess what? If I'm getting feedback, what do I get? Thank you. So if in a year from now, you know Promethean is the feedback company, I'm a happy guy. How do we give feedback? Right then, relevant, okay? Superintendents, principals today, what do? Ministers of education. They buy stuff. They have to pick things to help the kids, to help the teachers. How do they do that? They do RFPs, they talk to teachers, they get salespeople in, they get white papers, and they make a choice, right? And then they launch it. And 9 months later, they go, so what's happening? Launch a task force. Task force goes out there, goes, clam ranks the data, comes back, does a presentation. Guess how long this is since they started? Quite a while. And then the findings they do are all batch. It needs to pass the swivel test, which is what we did in the prior company. The principal swivels around, 2 or 3 keystrokes. They know what Billy's been doing that day. So on an RTI AIM line where you saw the kid going up or down, there were alerts. Boom, we push a message right to them. There's been 3 RTI intervention meetings missed or 1 below standard. You need to go down to the building to a 1-level room and see the next one, which is scheduled in 20 minutes. That's what we're doing, okay? And the way we're going to win the hearts and minds of the teachers, we're going to make this so easy and so productive for them, they're going to love using it. And it's not going to cost them a dime. These are people that cry when you give them a t-shirt. So we're not going to charge them anything for this. So, feedback. Whatever technology you put in the classroom, what does it do? It raises the interactivity level and the connectivity level in that classroom. That does result in student achievement gains. When you raise the interactivity level, which is the one vector on this, and the other is how you're implementing, where you are in the implementation cycle, are you mature, are you starting? When you pop up a level of technology, I don't care whether it's whiteboards, tablets, tables, laptops, it doesn't matter. Pick one. Do the first one, whatever one you want. Then deploy it correctly with the right PD, the right stuff around it so everybody knows how to use that, and they don't use a whiteboard for an audio-visual device, use it for teaching and learning, right? And so get that up, you will see student achievement gains. Put the next tranche in, deploy that, you'll get again. So what I want to do is I want to assess everything by what the academic results are. I don't want to hear feature function of products. I want to know how the math scores did. So we converted with Houghton Mifflin their entire Go Math series. With a handful of people, we took those 1,032 lesson plans and converted those to over 10,300 charts, interactive, and we track all of that interactivity between those lesson plans and what's happening between the child, the teacher, and the content. That's what you want to know. So to me, in closing, this is one of those things that's Archimedean, okay? Give me a big enough lever and I can move the world, right? So there's going to be more change. My belief and our belief is there's more change in education in this decade than will be in the preceding, you pick it, 5 to 10 decades, okay? And it started years ago with the web. The budgets have increased the pressure and the tablets have been the coup de grace, okay? And it's causing a disruption. And what we're trying to do is innovate into that disruption to help make sense of all those components coming in. So if you're sitting there with a bunch of tablets, you're sitting there with a bunch of content, how do we bring it all together and tell you at the end of the day of what works, what doesn't, by child, by teacher, by day, by content. And the only way to do that is to put that technology fabric in the classroom that helps the teacher. That's it. Any questions? Yes?
So you're talking about interconnectivity and interactivity, and I want to talk about interactivity. A lot of the new pedagogy and a lot of, certainly the focus of my work is to collaborate teams within the school and schools or inter groups. Can you do that? Can you get together groups of learners and can you track their growth?
Yeah, the question was, when you get the kids together, can you track the kids and the data and the interactivity amongst the different work groups within the class and the individuals? Yes, yes, that is the mission. So we support all 4 of these modalities, and embrace them. So if you have a classroom just with whole class, whiteboard, fine. If you have a class just with tablets, fine. If you have tables for small group peer-to-peer learning, fine. If you have any mixture of that, we don't care, okay? And when we tested this last week, the class was split actually between Seattle, Atlanta, and Blackburn in the UK. There's no room in class. There's no room, okay? So it's distributed by nature, all right? So if I've got an object that I'm working on this particular iPad and the teacher wants to share this with the group, they swipe it from the tablet to the board and the whole class sees it whether they're in the room or not, okay? Somebody can annotate right on it, swipe it right back, the whole class sees it or just that one person. It's groupware, shareware for the teacher. And there's going to be another assessment piece too, and I got to keep my mouth shut because I'm releasing secrets here, but there'll be stuff on the teacher. They'll see how they're doing moment to moment with the different questions and the content in the class. And they'll know when they're losing kids or losing the whole class or getting them or getting the kid. So we showed this to some of the RTI folks, and they called this Tier 0. And if you know RTI, there's Tier 1, 2, 3, and then Special Ed. There is no Tier 0. And I'm all confused because I'm not the Ed guy. I go, there is no Tier 0. He goes, yeah, that's what you just showed, the flow and go. You're making some of the manual leave the classroom day-to-day teaching. And you're going more assistive, automatic, using this stuff that we put in the classroom. Yes, ma'am.
You spoke a bit about that engagement increases student achievement. Do you have any data that shows about how it's really eliminates some of our racial disparities, the gaps and things like that?
Well, so what we want to do one thing really good in life, okay? And our company was working on business and government and stuff like that. I stopped all that stuff. We are an education company, period. In that vertical, that's it. And your question is about what to do with the data, right? So we will deliver some rudimentary, I would call basic level, interesting and important data to the teacher, and then we're going to have this pipe of all the other stuff, okay? Because you know, like Microsoft, anybody using Microsoft or Apple, every keystroke is captured, okay? What do you do with it, okay? So we don't capture that yet today in the classroom. That's what we're going to do first, and then we can pipe it in the case of these big districts. They all have data warehouses, they all have decision support systems, they all have IT teams working on this, but they don't have the pipe and the vacuum cleaner in the classroom to collect it out of, okay? There was a major technology company that did a major project in the state about 7, 8 years ago for $50 million. They got run out of the state and sued because they started passing out index cards for the teachers to fill out every day to go send it up to the central clearinghouse. They could be keyed in so they knew what was going on in the classroom. Are you kidding me? Manual system interrupted by a computer. Yeah. So if we get it right, the teachers will adopt it. Because there won't be a cost issue, and we want it to go viral. Anything else? Thank you. Appreciate it.